really good question to ask yourself, what brought you here and engaged in this type of talk, because I believe that that is one of the most important questions to ask yourself. And the reason I believe that is because it was asked to me one day and it really changed everything. You know, I'd had this huge spiritual awakening in my early 20s, very profound and one of the most beautiful experiences I've had in my entire life. I remember, I was driving in traffic and it just happened spontaneously. I didn't do any practice prior, nothing. I wasn't following a spiritual path at all. In fact, I was actually going through a bit of a life crisis at the time. I was going through a breakup with my partner. At the time, I had a severe career-ending injury, and I'd also developed this chronic fear of death, where I explained in my last video that it caused so much anxiety for me that emotions became so overwhelming that something just cracked inside of me. So it was almost like the catalyst for my spiritual awakening was I had to go through this type of crisis. And what I've found in the last decade of pursuing the spiritual path is, I don't like it personally, but it seems to be always the catalyst for deeper awakenings. In my experience, I keep hitting these crisis moments where I'm struggling to figure something out. Some things flow more smoothly, but there's always a sense of crisis that you reach that's really challenging you. It could be a breakup, could be financial difficulties, could be the loss of a loved one, but you enter this crisis and then all of a sudden something just cracks. And that happened to me. And when that happened, I completely changed my life from one day to the next. And I'm not talking about a slow, gradual effect, although some people do have spiritual awakenings in slow, gradual effects too. And we can go into that one in the next video maybe. But mine was very sudden and immediate. I'm talking, I went to work the one day and I came home completely different, and I just shifted my life completely. I had severe anxiety before, and then after that, the anxiety was completely gone. And the thing that felt the most important was pursuing this path. It was the most clarity I think I've ever felt in my life. I was just clear, this is the path that I'm taking. And I didn't know exactly what that path was. And I remember booking a round the world ticket, a one-way ticket. And when I arrived at my second destination, there was this teacher that was there. And my friend really wanted to go and see him because I went traveling with some friends in the beginning. And we went to this teacher, and the first day I was kind of not really that overly interested, but I was open. And he asked the question, what brought you here? And this is now 10 years after my big spiritual experience. I'd, kind of forgotten a little bit about it. And I had all these stories, just like I mentioned in the beginning, that what brought me there, I was just traveling the area and my friend wanted to come here, so that's why I came, and all these stories. And he answered the question saying that it was divine grace that brought you here. And I remember the feeling. He just got my attention. It was a hook. And it just took me back to that spiritual experience, and it just really reminded me that the North Star of my whole experience and travels was that experience as the catalyst. That's the reason I was traveling. That's the reason I changed my life. That's the reason I started pursuing this path, was this deep experience. And he then went on to say that the other reason we are there is because we're seeking a miracle. And that is the miracle of overcoming the conditioned mind. When you think about that, like overcoming the conditioned mind, and those two sentences just stuck with me. And that's why I find it such an important question to ask, because, there's another story that I'll bring into this of, I heard when I was overseas, one of my friends told me, and it was the story of this father that's walking his young child on the beach, and the young child is just in awe. It's looking around at the sky, the ocean, and all of a sudden it looks and it points, and there's this beautiful blue bird flying through the sky. And the father says, "That's a blue bird." And it was the last time the boy ever saw it. And what that means is that, what that story was actually saying from my friend's perspective was that when you label something, you no longer see it as it is. When you create a belief or you put a label on something, you no longer see it for what it is, because the words blue bird don't describe what that young boy was experiencing, the connection to it. It actually separated him from the experience because he was feeling it, he was in awe by it, and then all of a sudden it's a label and it becomes a thought. And that happens so much on this path, is that my own experience is constantly being confronted with my own conditioned beliefs. And you can see this in so many different aspects, especially when you get triggered in a specific situation. There's something that's happening that everyone's a part of, and then all of a sudden you get triggered, whether it's by your partner or your parents or your child, your friends, stranger, and all of a sudden you have all this tension, frustration, anger, and you no longer see the situation as it is. You start to react out of a certain place, out of a belief, out of a label that this shouldn't be like this, that person shouldn't be acting like this, I shouldn't be being treated like this, whatever the situation is. We no longer see the situation clearly as it is. We're stuck in our own story and we're stuck in our own conditioned beliefs, and it causes so much suffering. And this path for me has been really challenging. That's one of the hardest parts about the spiritual path, is it feels to me like it's a search for truth, whatever that may be. And a part of the path is we have to kind of be true with ourselves, and by doing that we have to challenge the conditions of our mind. And some of the things we know to be true, to maybe take a step back and see, is that actually true? Is that a conditioned belief? So, what brought you here? Where is your spiritual awakening actually taking you? Long story short, is it's taking you beyond the system of beliefs. It's actually taking you beyond your system of beliefs. And that's what I feel is one of the big challenges on the spiritual path, and learning how to integrate that experience of being connected to your essential nature, which feels like the truth, and then coming back to this personality with all these conditions and beliefs which causes so much suffering. So I hope that video brings some insight, and I'd love to hear in the comments what is your story, what brought you here. So if you're interested to go deeper into these specific topics, in the descriptions you'll see that there's a link to a Skool community. It's a free integration circle for spiritual seekers and people that have had spiritual experiences to join, come together, have conversations with each other, and just be a part of a supporting community. So if you feel called to it, check out in the descriptions the Skool link and just sign in.